Hi there, and welcome to the Echo Solar Home Tour. My name is Andrew Mills, and today we're going to be talking about a net zero ready home in the Crossings neighborhood in Lethbridge. With me today is Brian Sexton, who's the homeowner and builder of the home. Welcome to the Echo Solar Home Tour, Brian.
Hey, Andrew, thanks for having us on the tour.
Well, Brian, your home is an example of a net zero ready home that features high levels of insulation and air sealing, passive solar heating, and it's a fully electric home with no natural gas. So give me a bit of background on why you chose to build your home like this. What were the main things you were trying to accomplish?
So, Andrew, our story goes back to our first house. The very first house we purchased was built to an R2000 standard. We lived there for about 9 years and really enjoyed the low energy costs of that house. But we just didn't know how good we had it until we moved to a different house as our family grew. And we just wanted a bigger yard. So the second house we were in, after a few months of living there, we discovered our energy bills had almost tripled.
Hmm.
And it was just it was just a hard pill to swallow for us. So we set about trying to make some changes to that house to improve efficiency. That house was just built to code, nothing special about it for energy wise. But ultimately, we just decided, well, let's start over, start from scratch, build the house that we really want, and sort of build our forever home. Strong focus on energy efficiency, of course. And just in planning for that and looking into it, that's when we learned about this concept of net zero construction.
Hmm.
So we secured a lot, secured a south-facing lot here in Lethbridge, and secured a net zero designer out of Edmonton, and worked with him on the design. So our main focus just was really just the financial aspect, because from our experience, we knew that an energy efficient home can just keep money in your pocket. So a lot of our decisions going into this house, as we went through the design process, a lot of decisions had a very heavy focus on the financial. So a lot of folks think energy efficiency is just about the green aspect, but there really is a financial benefit to it. Overarching goal was to get off the natural gas grid, because we always looked at our gas bill and our power bill and thought, well, what if you just had a power bill and
Mm-hmm.
you could roll those fixed costs from the natural gas bill over to the power bill, even though electricity tends to be somewhat more expensive.
Hmm. So, what's the EnerGuide rating of this new home? What information do you have on that?
So our EnerGuide rating, we had a door blower test done and had the rating done. We set at 48, but we've been tracking our energy use since August of 2016 when we first moved in. And from that, our actual usage is more like 35 gigajoules per year, as opposed to the 48 on the EnerGuide. If you kind of look,
Hmm.
year one and year two, our usage was well below the 10,000 kilowatt hours per year. Sorry, I work in kilowatt hours.
That's all right.
Um, but in year three, we bought an electric vehicle, so you can see how it crept up just from that. But year one and year two are more representative of what just the house is doing.
So, just for our viewers, there are 277 kilowatt hours in a gigajoule, so it's very easy to convert from one to the other. Now, just a comment on the EnerGuide rating. It's based on the home's envelope and doesn't really consider the people living in the home. And most people who build energy efficient homes tend to live a little lighter on the earth than most people, and so they find that their EnerGuides are usually less than what the actual rating is. So good for you. Kudos for you. So let's take a look at some other pictures of your home. First of all, what would you say is the standout feature of your home, Brian?
Just for folks walking by on the street, we get the occasional comment that they just like the sort of architectural design of it. In this particular housing development, you got to choose from 4 different architectural styles. So we went with the modern style,
Hmm.
because modern is function drives form, and we just found that that was a good approach for net zero design. But I can't stress enough that if you want to build energy efficient, it's up to you. You don't have to stick to one certain design on the outside or inside. You can do whatever you like. Um, so as far as other standout features, I'd say it tends to be just the materials we used on the exterior.
Hmm.
We went with cement fiber siding and then corrugated metal siding. and then the roof as well is metal. So part of what's happening with the environment now is we get these severe weather events of windstorms and hailstorms, and we just wanted to have a home that stood up to all that. So
So, when we build energy efficient homes, we make a series of energy efficient choices. What would you say were the main choices you had to make as far as energy efficiency in your home?
So I guess one of the first features of the home was where we were putting it. So the picture here is panoramic. The street in front of our house is actually straight, not curved. But in the site selection, we looked for a house that faced, or a lot that faced due south, which this one does. And as you can see from the photo, it's just completely unobstructed. We overlook these soccer fields, which is nice.
Ah, okay. So those won't be developed then. That's a soccer field.
No.
Okay.
In fact, the city had a tree growing near the curb right in front of our house, an elm tree, and we put in a request to have that removed because we just didn't want to have that shadow on the
Mm-hmm.
house. So as far as design features on the outside, a part of it is just taking advantage of that southern exposure to take advantage of that free heat to heat the home.
Mm-hmm.
This picture here shows it's early morning on a December day. And as the sun comes up, you can see it's just shooting right on those windows, large south-facing windows, and getting to work on heating the home. So that's part of what we call the passive solar design.
Mm-hmm.
In the summer, it's a different story. You don't want that
Oh,
heat
yeah.
coming in. So as part of the exterior design, we have these 3-foot overhangs over both of the front windows. And they're dead easy to incorporate because
Mm-hmm.
you just do your truss design and then extend it 3 feet past your wall. And in the case of the window on the bottom, we just extend it the floor joist 3 feet past the wall. And you see by the shadow, this is taken just recently here in June as we approach the summer solstice. And the shadowing on the windows is just right in the dead of summer.
Looks
And
perfect.
what happens there is, as a result, we don't actually need air conditioning for this house.
Mm.
So worked out well.
Yeah, that shading looks really good. That's a really good set of pictures showing the December allowing the sun getting into your windows, and then in the summertime the shading of your windows so that you don't get overheating in the summer. Those are two good pictures. Thank you for those.
Right. This shows a little bit of detail on the roof design and how we design the roof to take advantage of that southern exposure. But if we ever install solar panels. So if we're net zero ready, the house is ready for panels. If we ever put the panels on, we'll be fully net zero. Another advantage of that roof design was capturing water from the roof for our garden, and I'll show that later in the presentation.
Okay.
An architectural requirement was actually to have that overhang, just that peak at the back there. We couldn't have normal peaks. We had to have an overhang. And what came of that, we sort of opposed that requirement at first, but as we delved into it, discovered that if we put vented soffit underneath that overhang, that would act as our vents for the roof.
Oh,
and
interesting.
What that means is we didn't have to install traditional vents on the roof that get in the way of the solar panels.
Do you want to just point that out, where the overhang is?
Just 2 seconds.
Just on the back top there. Okay, yeah, right there. Okay.
Yeah.
And so that's all vented, and so that becomes your roof ventilation.
Yeah, correct.
Oh, interesting.
So as a visual, this is the back of the house, and you can see that overhang, and that's all vented soffit up there.
Okay.
The thing to note here for later in the talk is how the windows are sort of pushed into the wall, and we'll get to that when we look at windows. So passive solar design. This is in the fall. So at this time of year, you're getting a good free heat in the house. So. As far as our wall construction, we went with double 2x4 studs. So kind of hard to see on the far wall, but if you look on the left there, you'll see it's basically two 2x4 frames, one to form an outer wall, so to speak, and one to form an inner wall. We get asked a lot, why didn't we stagger the studs to prevent even more heat loss? And the answer is it's just not, it's a minimal gain when you do that. And when you keep in mind construction efficiency, when the framers are doing their job, they just want to be able to build a wall on the ground and they
Right.
can lay the second wall over top of that and frame accordingly. I did a lot of the wiring in this house, ran a lot of the wires,
Okay.
and one thing I liked is you simply staple the wire to the back of the outer studs, so you don't have
Mm-hmm.
to drill holes. And then down the road, if you're mounting cabinets or drilling deep into a stud, you're less likely to hit a wire. So
Right.
if you look closely, there's a top and bottom plate that's a OSB plate,
Mm-hmm.
and that actually forms part of the air barrier system for the wall system.
Mm.
This is a picture of the insulation. It's cellulose fiber insulation. So those installers come along and install this netting and then cut small holes in it for the hose and then just blow the fiber in
Oh, so
until it
this
reaches.
is netting that we're seeing in this picture. Okay.
Yeah, that's the netting. And if you look at the holes, you can see a bit of insulation poking out there.
Okay.
So they blow that in under higher pressure just until they reach a certain density. And if they achieve that density, then there's no risk of settling in the wall. That's a question
Mm.
we get quite often.
Mm.
So the idea is to get these big pillows on your framing, and
Right.
then they pack it in with a roller, just so the
Okay.
drywallers can get the drywall on.
Well, and so you can get the vapor barrier up too. And here's the vapor barrier.
Yeah. So vapor barrier winds up being, because of the way the walls are built with the top and bottom plates, vapor barrier winds up being your air barrier for the house.
Okay.
So double duty. Care has to be taken, making sure that you do use acoustical sealant to connect to those top and bottom plates, and then anywhere around the windows. And then as far as any taping you have to do, you can see the green tape there. I think it's called
Right.
Siga tape,
Right.
special tape meant for use with vapor barrier and
Mm-hmm.
seal up the outlets and such.
Okay.
As far as our attic went, it's actually the same cellulose fiber material. It's just under a different brand name.
Mm-hmm.
And we blew that in about 2 feet thick. And that gives us an R90 attic.
Mm.
Sorry, 4 feet thick.
4. Holy cow.
I believe, if I have that right, I believe so. Going back to the wall system, the wall gives us an R40 wall
Okay.
and then an R90 attic.
Wow.
And then just looking off to the right there, we got some cabling hanging from the rafters, and that's just for future solar. So we
Oh,
made
okay.
sure.
So you're already wired for solar.
Yeah.
Nice.
So we wanted to make sure that was in place. As far as the basement, we did 4 inches of styrofoam under the slab. That makes for about an R12 under the slab.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that is to put vapor barrier material again sandwich between the 2 layers.
Oh, I
And
see.
then we seal every penetration, like the teleposts and the plumbing penetrations. So you can kind of see the vapor barrier taped to the wall there temporarily.
Right. Right.
And then later that'll be connected to the wall vapor barrier and then again form a continuous air barrier for the home.
Okay.
So the slab just gets poured right over top of this.
Okay.
And then later on the walls, it's already installed, but 4 inches of styrofoam on the walls.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we put up a 2x4 frame for the wall, we then blew in another 6 inches of dense pack cellulose fiber.
Okay.
So that makes for about an R32 on the basement walls,
Okay.
but a little bit more if you want to get technical and say that the concrete behind it gives a little bit of R value. So,
Fair enough.
yeah. As far as our windows, very important part of the building envelope. We went with triple pane argon filled. This is one of the south facing windows. And a different thing we did, you may not see in other buildings, is we put the window in the center of the wall. So we set it in a little bit.
Okay.
Just because studies have shown when you do that, you minimize the air or the heat loss around the frame. And it saves you a few hundred kilowatt hours per year, but when you're into these net zero homes, that's a big deal because the energy usage is so low. So we thought it was well worth doing.
That's a terrific picture of the window. Great shot. Good camera work there, Brian.
Thank you. And I guess that also demonstrates just how thick the walls are on the house, 12 inches thick. And then you wind up with this nice little windowsill to work with.
Right, right.
As far as our heating system, we went with electric baseboard heaters. In the design stage, we had a lot of conversations with our designer about the need for a cooling system and a heating system in the home.
Mm-hmm.
And we had full intention of installing an air source heat pump to achieve those two things, because heat pump will give you both heating and cooling.
Mm-hmm.
But we were always told that if you install air source heat pump, you should have some sort of electric resistance backup for extreme cold, because the heat pumps just don't quite keep up at low temperatures. So one of the options was to install these. You could either do it as an electric resistance heater in the ductwork, or just put these in every room. So we took a bit of a different approach, because we were actually in the middle of the build when our designer phoned us up and said, "Hey, I want to change your windows."
Oh dear.
And I said, "Are you trying to make the rest of my hair fall out?" And what he was doing was playing around with the energy model of the home. And he discovered that if he made those south-facing windows a little bit smaller
Mm-hmm.
and changed the glazing to let in a little bit less light, prevent a little more heating,
Mm-hmm.
the result was he would shift the energy load of the house away from the cooling and into the heating.
Okay.
So the theory being, if this worked, then we wouldn't need air conditioning, or we wouldn't need that function of the heat pump.
Okay.
So we did it backwards. Instead of installing the heat pump and then having a backup resistance heat, we installed the baseboard heaters first, and we roughed in for the heat pump. And then our first summer in the house, it was a scorcher, and right away that was proof that we didn't need air conditioning.
Oh, good.
So that was the end of it. We didn't need to buy a heat pump, an air source heat pump, and we just stuck with these.
So resistance heaters like these are very inexpensive, aren't they? These are just a couple $100 each or something.
Yeah, I always say I bought my furnace at Home Depot because it was just a shopping cart full of these baseboard heaters. They cost about $100 a piece,
Uh-huh.
and there's one in every room. And what we love about them is just the redundancy, because if one breaks down, then you've got all the other ones in the house working,
Right.
and then you just run out to Home Depot and get yourself another one. So this one is 1,250 watts. It's our biggest one in the house, in the living room.
Mm-hmm.
Smallest one in the home, this is one of the boys' bedrooms. It's 500 watts.
Mm-hmm.
The controller is wireless, which is nice, because then you just have to run wires to each heater for the power. And then the controller's wireless, so there's no need for those cables.
Oh.
And it has all the functionality of, you can put it under schedule, a timer. You can press when you're away, and it does have smartphone capability. So rarely do we use this wall mount. We actually use
It's ideally hooked up for zone control because you have a heater in every room.
Yeah, we can do up to 4 zones there.
Okay.
We use 3 because there's just 3 levels of the home.
Okay.
And I think we've achieved some savings just from that, because if you're not using the basement, you just have that on a lower setting. So.
Right.
Getting into ventilation, when you build a home that's this airtight, you need to bring fresh air in, just to not only control humidity, to just give a good living environment for the occupants. So that's my wife's artwork, but above it is you'll see these vents in every room.
Mm-hmm.
And in most of the rooms, they blow fresh air in, but in the washrooms, the kitchen, and the laundry closet, they pull air out. So they want to withdraw the moisture from the home.
All right.
So that's the controller for it. We run ours on 24/7. We run it on the lowest setting, just so it's continuously bringing fresh air in.
Okay.
But these controllers, you can have other settings where it just turns on full blast during the day at certain times and such.
Okay.
And it monitors the humidity as well.
Mm-hmm.
In the bathrooms, here's the quick little switch. If you're going to take a shower, you just hit the button on 20, 40, or 60 minutes. So it pulls the moisture out of the washroom.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as the heart of that ventilation system, it's the big white box on the far wall. And this is a heat recovery ventilator. Mm-hmm. So it brings cool, fresh air into the home, and it exchanges heat with the air coming out of the home being exhausted. So you recover a little bit of the heat that you're losing from the home just through ventilation.
Hmm.
So on the right is our electrical panel. I'll just touch upon that. It's a 200 amp panel, and in our load demand calculation for the home, we came up with something like 143 amps required. So we could have put in a 150 amp panel, but we said, what if, what if we wind up with 2 electric cars or something like that? So we went for 200. And a neat thing that the city of Lethbridge does is in new areas, they actually have 200 amps available at the curb.
Okay.
When I talk to folks in other cities, they have this challenge of maybe only 100 amps at the curb. So tip of the hat to City of Lethbridge for just being, forward thinking on that.
Right.
And in speaking with them, they have come to the conclusion that we're going to have more electrified homes as we go. So on the left is our hot water tank. So big thing we learned here is like, don't oversize your tank. This one's 38 gallons and we've never run out of hot water.
Right.
So this one is pure electric. It's not a heat pump. It's just straight resistance heating. Pretty simple installation. We did add these, what I call heat traps on top of the tank, where the pipe will come up, do a jog, come down, and then jog up again. So as the heat travels up that pipe, it tends to stop at that first horizontal. When you look at traditional installations, the pipes sort of run straight up into the rafters, and
Right.
you can sort of lose heat all day, every day through that. So this stops it. And then we just
I've not seen that before. That's a very interesting installation.
Yeah, very inexpensive, very quick thing for the plumber to do. And then we just threw some extra insulation on top to be sure.
Right.
That blue box is actually an energy monitor, and I'll mention that later.
Okay.
Back to the kitchen, all lights in the house are LED. So that's a no-brainer. I think just the oven light can't be LED because it'll melt. Speaking of the oven, our stove is an induction range. So the oven is very much the same as any other oven, but the cooking top is induction. And we did this for energy efficiency, but it's a beautiful stove to work with because heats up very quickly, boils water quickly. And we have younger kids, or did when we moved in, and the risk of burns from the cooktop is a little bit less with these types of stoves. So
excellent.
Quite like it. All the other appliances like throughout the kitchen and so on are Energy Star. And this is our ventless dryer. So in a net zero home, you don't really want to poke a big hole in the wall for an exhaust for the dryer because it'll just let cold air in. So we went with the ventless dryer. It has a heat pump in it and a condenser, and it basically takes the moisture out of the clothes and then blows it down the drain. So there's quite a bit of debate out there on how long these take to dry clothes. And from what I've gathered, that's when you're in a humid climate, it takes a long time for the clothes to dry. But we're lucky here in Alberta, that pretty dry climate. This one will start at 90 minutes, but it's never done that because as it runs, it'll adjust the time down based on the moisture of the clothes. So
just above the dryer, I can actually see you have your heat recovery ventilator duct just hidden in the darkness and behind there. So that's taking the air out of this room or bringing it in?
That's pulling it out. That's a good eye there, Andrew. That was our HVAC guy. I definitely recommend putting that in there.
Right.
You don't get a lot of moisture, but you just don't want moisture in your home like that. So that pulls it out.
Right.
But as with anything, best way to dry clothes is on a clothes rack. We have this out on the deck outside, and then we have one in the hallway near that dryer. So let nature do the work.
So another important area for savings is water costs. What features have you incorporated in your home to address water costs, Brian?
So we actually have what's called a rain garden in our front yard. And this was a project made possible by the folks at Rain Gardens for Resilience. And a local contractor worked on this. And what it is they came in and just sort of dug the yard down to create sort of a deep hard pan in the front yard. And then they filled that back up with quality topsoil. And the idea is when you think back to our roof design that catches most of the water, all that water from the roof is coming down the downspout on the left of the house there. and it actually runs into a pipe under the bed, the raised bed here, and it daylights by these rocks.
Okay.
So the idea is to capture all that water from the roof, make use of it, and then just have it percolate through the garden and water those plants. So
Mm.
your plant selection is important because the raised beds, those are very drought tolerant plants. And then the lower bed is plants that need a bit more water, but can
Mhm.
still withstand the prairie climate here. So definitely some water savings here. And the idea of this is it reduces the load on the city storm drain system.
So does the city give you any credit for that because you're reducing your storm runoff?
No, I wish they did, but
Okay.
this is a sort of project you just hope catches on with other folks. So
Right. Fair enough.
as far as our backyard, we couldn't figure out what to do with that space, so we just wanted a flex space. So we put some lawn in. But that lawn, it was seeded and it's a fescue mix. So
Okay.
it's more meant for our climate. Um, I think this year, it's June right now, and we've mowed this lawn twice,
Mm.
and you do not have to water it. That's one nice thing about it. It's good enough with the precipitation we get, and it grows very slowly, so you don't have to mow it too often.
That's terrific. So, are there any other features of your home you want to feature? Perhaps tell us about your electric car.
Sorry about that.
Oh no,
Um,
go ahead. Tell us. It's you to tell us what you've got.
yeah, I'll just go back to those energy monitors for a
Oh, okay.
minute. We have been tracking. This one's for the hot water tank. It's an
Hmm.
Quanta monitor.
Okay.
Um, Neat little device, tracks the energy usage, and you can actually control it from your smartphone to turn the temperature of the heater down if you're on vacation or something.
Okay.
These are the hydro monitors, and two of them to monitor our heating circuits. So we're tracking hot water, heat, and then for our electric car, the car charger actually has a built-in monitor for it as well. So we've been
Okay.
tracking those for over a year now.
Okay.
But yeah, getting to the electric car, 2015 Nissan Leaf. We bought it used.
Hmm.
Lots of talk about how expensive EVs are. I encourage folks to look at used because we were quite happy with the price on this.
Hmm.
My wife uses this for her commute back and forth to her work.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I always like to show the winter picture because EVs do work in the winter. My wife goes, it doesn't matter what's happening for the weather that day, she takes the electric car to her work.
Hmm.
It's about an 80-kilometer round trip commute for her.
Oh,
And
good.
these things are like the battery sits in the floor of the vehicle, giving a low center of gravity. Very fun to drive, very torquey. And I actually prefer this in the winter over the truck that we own. So
Interesting. So now, what would you say is the most challenging aspect, the most challenging thing that you found when you were building your home?
I don't have a traditional build to compare it to, but because this was the first house I ever general contracted, but
Hmm.
um, I guess nothing really. The code inspectors, the city inspectors, they'd have the occasional question like, why is your heat requirement so low, for example? But once we explained, everything we were doing and it just made sense to them, it just wasn't there. You just weren't used to seeing it. So that was always cleared up. As far as working with the trades and the contractors, no issue there either.
Hmm.
I think the most complicated job was for the framer.
Uh-huh.
And he just looked at it and said, well, framing is framing. It doesn't matter what kind of wall you're building. And away he went. So
And away you went. So,
yeah.
what were the key costs in building your home?
Key costs would have been the insulation, probably more than double on a traditional home or a code built home.
Mhm.
But what we discovered after we added everything up was, yes, you pay more for the insulation, but it's kind of offset by the fact that you're not installing a furnace
Hmm.
and the gas fitting and the associated large ductwork for that. So when we really drilled down in the cost tracking, we found those two things sort of cancel each other out.
Interesting.
And in the end, when we did go through our costs and added everything up, we made adjustments for a sweat equity, like we pulled that out and replaced it with actual quotes.
Right.
And then we threw on a healthy sort of builder's markup to make it as if a builder built this home. and it came in at the same cost per square foot as any other home in our neighborhood.
Wow.
So it just really begs the question, why aren't more builders building this way? And when you can have a net zero ready home,
Mhm.
not with the solar panels, which can cost extra, but just a net zero ready home for the future, and enjoy the low energy bills.
Right, right. So do you have any examples of cost savings as a result of the way you built this home?
Cost savings for sure is just the energy bills, like I mentioned. I think right now we're averaging about $130 per month
Hmm.
for the cost. And we talked to our friends that have gas furnaces, and they just are quite impressed by that. So definitely, as we set out to do, just the cost savings. Um, as far as sort of initial costs, like I mentioned before, we were able to steer away from a heat pump, which tends to drive the cost up a little bit.
Hmm.
And yeah, that is basically on the energy savings. That's what saves you.
So is there anything you would have done differently in building your home?
We would have installed a heat recovery drain. We had
Hmm.
full intention of doing that, but just as the build went on and just the location of the washrooms throughout the home, it was just one of those things that sort of got missed.
Yeah.
So I guess it's a bad thing, but it's a good thing because it sort of illustrates that here's our bills and here's our energy usage, and it could be even better if we had installed that drain.
Fair enough. So what aspect of your home was the most satisfying for you to complete?
During the build, I think my favorite is the framing. I just love the smell of the lumber.
Hmm.
And then the really cool part was when the insulation went in. All of a sudden, the home just becomes very quiet, and that insulation in the wall is just really an investment in the future because you just do it once and it doesn't go away and it doesn't break down and it's there for good. So enjoyed that.
Great. What's the part of your home that you like the best?
It's quiet. Um,
Hmm.
you don't have a furnace kicking on every few minutes and blowing dust everywhere, and you don't have the up and down temperature swings. And in Lethbridge, we get these terrible winds. Anyone from here can attest to that. And just between the thick windows and the thick walls and the insulation that we use, it's just a lot of soundproofing on the home. So very quiet, very sort of healthy environment with the ventilator running all the time, bringing fresh air in. When I compare it to previous homes, it really is quite a nice environment to live in.
Hmm. Hmm. Is there any way? Well, first of all, thank you, Brian. Thank you for showing me this great home of yours. It's really a terrific home. Is there anybody you'd like to thank who helped you design and construct your home?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, of course, want to thank all the contractors and trades that worked with us. They were all just, we got really lucky. And the folks we worked with, they're all just excellent. Big thanks to Peter Amarongan, the fellow on the right there. He was our designer. He's been referred to as the grandfather of net zero in Alberta,
Hmm.
maybe even Canada. Absolute honor to work with him, and he nailed it. He gave us a design that worked and a beautiful floor plan. I also like to thank Anita Timberski with Symmetrical Design here in Lethbridge. Anita helped us with the interior design, which we're just not good at. And she just has a really strong eye for color and texture. And as a result, just gave us a great living space. And can't thank her enough. My wife, Katrina, when we started the build, I suddenly realized I'd bitten off way more than I could chew. And she stepped up as she always does and cleared the path. In doing so, basically more than doubled her workload and responsibilities. But she always stands behind me on these crazy ventures. So thank you, Katrina.
Well, that's great. Well, thank you, Brian, for joining me today and sharing pictures of your home. I am looking forward to getting down to see your home when we're able to do in-person tours in the future. I also want to thank our Echo Solar Home Tour sponsors. Our sponsors offer many interesting services to help you build an energy-efficient home, and we encourage you to visit them. Please visit our website to find the links to all our sponsors. To find out more about the tour homes, tour dates, and sponsors, please go to our website at www.ecosolar.ca. We'll see you on the tour. Thank you all for watching.